Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight or this morning if you're coming in from Japan for the PostJet Power Up Your PostJet Job Search webinar. Super excited to have everyone here. And thank you so much for introducing yourselves in the chat. It's great to see so much diverse representation from across Japan as well as other parts of the world. So welcome everybody. And Maxwell, great to see you. Caitlin, great to see you. Thanks for joining. Hello, Megan. Hello, Michael. Thank you everyone so much for joining tonight. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to let the folks know who are impacted by the earthquake. I just heard about it and read about it on the news. We're thinking of you guys. We hope you are all safe. For anyone who's tuning in live now, who has friends who are without internet, can't attend this, please do let them know that this is being recorded so they don't need to stress out. They can watch this anytime, and you guys can watch this anytime. Again, if you want to revisit anything we're talking about, it's there for you. So let's get started, everyone, shall we? Okay, so I'm just going to open up my presentation. We have a lot to cover today. I'm really excited about all the good stuff that we have lined up for you all. So let's get this shared. All right. So as I said, today we're talking about powering up your PostJet job search. And I know that a lot of you attended the PostJet Conference yesterday. I'd love to hear how it went for you, what learnings you had. You can let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear what the experience was like for you. So I'm just going to hop over to my presentation, and I will be hopping back and forth to the chat. So I might not see your questions as they come up or your comments as they do come up, but I will get back to them. So let me just go right to my presentation. All right, so I haven't introduced myself yet. I should start with that because you're probably like, who is this person? I am Kamara Toffolo. I am a resume writer and a LinkedIn consultant and job search strategist. I was named this year as one of the LinkedIn top voices for the job search and career category. Super honored, super flattered that I was recognized for this. Also recognized as the #1 job search strategist to follow in 2019 by JobScan. And I've been published in media and a best-selling book. I'm a JET alum just like you. So I returned from my JET adventure probably a lot longer ago than most of you. So I was in Gunma from 2007 to 2008. And now I'm in the field of job search. I have clients all over the world. And as you will see, as we are going through our journey of this webinar together, I'm obsessed with The Office. If you are obsessed with The Office like me, I would love to hear that from you. And just tell me in the chat if you like The Office as much as I do. And I'm talking about the US version, not the UK version. All right, so for those of you who are just joining and haven't said hi in the chat, please do take a moment to tell me where you're tuning in from, where you were on JET, and what years you were on JET. I would love to hear. And I'm just going to pop over to the chat and take a look at what everybody's saying. Hello, Michael. Hello, Chloe. Thanks for joining. Hello, Demina Piccolo. Great to have you all here. Wonderful. Thank you for joining, everyone. So let's get into this. Let's take a peek at what we've got ahead of us. We have a lot ahead of us, so much so that the agenda takes up 2 slides. But don't let that scare you off, please. If you haven't already, please take a moment to grab a pen and paper or to have some sort of note-taking application up on your phone or on your computer. You will need it to take some notes. So what we're going to talk about first and foremost is the #1 thing that's going to make or break your job search. What you need to take care of before you start your job search. We're going to get into some resume things. particularly translating your JET experience, which is really, really important. Transferable skills, which I know is a big thing that a lot of JETs are curious about, wondering about, worried about. So we'll talk about that. How to write a standout resume. We'll talk about job search and interview roadblocks, what could actually be getting in your way in terms of actually landing an interview. We'll have a 5-minute break because we'll need it. We're covering a lot of stuff. We're going deep. And then we'll come back from that break. We'll talk about our LinkedIn things, why you must have a profile. This is a non-negotiable if you want a job, and I think we all do. How to catch and keep eyeballs on your LinkedIn profile. Then we'll get into job search things, more roadblocks keeping you from getting interviews, my pro tips for pandemic job searching, which I'm actually going to address earlier in the talk because this is really important stuff that I think is on everyone's minds. And then we're going to get into a Q&A. So I am keeping the Q&A at the end, but if you have a question come up for you and you want to put it in the chat, please do feel free. I will get back to it if I can't answer it right away. I'd rather you ask the question right away in the chat rather than forget what that question was. So please do feel free to actively use the chat amongst yourselves as well. It's there for you to connect, network with your peers and fellow JET alumni, and also to ask any questions. All right, so let's dig in. So job searching is tough, especially as a JET, job searching is tough. I remember when I was preparing for my return from Japan, I was like, how do I make sense of Japan for future employers? How do I get a job when I'm physically in Japan and I need to get a job before I land? Lots of stress that I was causing myself because there were so many unknowns and so many things that I didn't have any idea of how to navigate, especially when it came to standing out. Like, how did I make sure that I got noticed above everyone else? So that's really what we're going to talk about today. Is really how to stand out and make your experience, your life-changing experience on JET, make sense to future employers. That's really the key here. So the first thing that was on the agenda was like the number one thing that's possibly getting in your way of landing a job or landing even an interview. And that is, are you qualified? So this is the number one factor that will make or break your job search. Perhaps you're applying for jobs for which you are not qualified. That happens a lot. That's why that GIF is there. Take a chance on me. If we find ourselves saying, well, if the employer will only take a chance on me, if they'll only give me a chance, something is amiss. That is symptomatic of something not being right in your job search, because we should need an employer to take a chance on us. We should be able to tell the employer why we're qualified or why we're a great fit for that role. And possibly when it comes to your resume or your LinkedIn, you're not showing that you're qualified. That happens a lot too. So we kind of have a bit of a dilemma as JETs, don't we? We're having these life-changing experiences for some of us on the complete opposite end of the world. And it's like, now what? What do I do with this? Employers don't get it. Employers back home generally don't understand JET unless they were a JET themselves or unless they have some sort of tie to the JET program. They just don't. And, you know, you could be facing some other life-changing career adventures. Let's say before you went on JET, you left a career and now you're ready to get back into it. That was mine. That was my situation. Maybe you were really early in your career, so you're just trying to get started. So lots of us graduate university and go right into JET. Or maybe JET just opened your eyes to the new possibilities for yourself in your career. And so maybe you're going through a career transformation. There's a lot going on and a lot that needs to be considered before you start your job search, which brings me to before you start. So the first thing that you really need to do before you start your job search, come on slide, is to really nail down what is your target job. So nailing down the now what part. Now that I'm done jet, now what? The reason it's so important to identify the target job or the job that you're going to go after next is because you need to have a clear vision and idea of what that is so that your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, your interview stories all can be focused and targeted towards making you the most qualified person for the role, helping interviewers and hiring managers and recruiters see you as the most qualified person for that job. So that's why the target job is so important. And you don't start cooking before you know what you're making, right? Just for an analogy. And then you need to take stock of what you've already accomplished in your career, what you've already accomplished on jet. This is really important as well because those are your qualifications. What you've accomplished demonstrates how you are a qualified professional. So using food analogies, which are my favorite, what ingredients do you already have in your kitchen? What can you already pull from to make that dish or to, demonstrate that you're the best person for the job? So let's talk about uncovering that target job. So this does take time, and I'm not an expert in uncovering what target jobs are or discovering what you're meant to do as a professional. My job is helping you get from point A to point B. So before you start the journey from point A to point B, you need to get really clear on your target job. So what is that point B? But this is not a process that you want to rush. I know that many of you probably feel a lot of pressure to identify what your target job is and to get going on your job search. And I get that. So in the meantime, as you're working on uncovering what your kind of dream job is or what the ultimate job is for you at this time, by all means, consider targeting what's called a bridge job. So it's a job for right now, a job for which you are qualified that will help you as kind of a stepping stone towards your dream job. I'm going to give you some resources that can help you as you're working to discover your target job. So you might want to consider working with a career clarity coach. I know a lot of great ones. I can refer you on to them. So if that's something that you'd like, please do send me an email. You could also consider, if you're more of the DIY type, I would really recommend the book that I was published in, which is UMAP. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. I think there's an Audible version and also a hard copy. So it's a great kind of pocket career coach in a sense, which can really help you work on identifying what your target job is. And then Kasia, she's at Ikigai Connections. She lived for 8 years in Japan, has a very strong tie to Japan, and she helps people, her clients, identify what their career Ikigai is. So if you just Google Ikigai Connections, you'll find her, and she offers a service that helps people identify what is next for them in their careers. But until such time, in the meantime, let's focus today, tonight, wherever you're coming in from, let's focus on the job search, okay? This is the tactical, strategic kind of thing, aspect that you need to consider once you've identified either what your bridge job or dream job is. So let's get into it. So one thing that I also want you to build a habit around actually is to track your accomplishments at work on an ongoing basis in a work wins file. So this is where you take stock of and keep track of all the amazing things that you've done on the job. It's basically a brain dump of awesomeness. I really recommend that you build this as a habit now and you basically do it until you retire. And so what you're doing is just writing down great things that you do, amazing things that you've done at work, right when they happen or when you recall them so that you don't forget them. And with the work wins file, I just want you to write it down. So I don't want you to treat the work wins file as a resume. I just want you to treat it as kind of like almost a journal of all the great things that you've done at work. And so my recommendation with a work wins file is to have a running document that you can access across all of your devices. So maybe something on Google Docs, or maybe iCloud Notes or something like that, so that you can write down all your thoughts about the amazing things that you've done at work whenever they pop into your mind, or whenever you remember to actually write it down. So some examples of things that you might go in your work wins file is going above and beyond, how you may have changed things for the better, creative or really innovative things that you did, and ways that you've exhibited leadership. That's also really important. I have a video on my YouTube channel about how to track your work accomplishments. So you can take a deeper look at that if you need some more prompts or ideas of how to do this or what to track. So do check that out after the webinar tonight. Okay, so let's talk about making JET make sense to people who aren't JETs. So one thing I want, if you were to walk away with only one thing, let's say from tonight's or today's webinar, what I want you to walk away with is everything is translatable. So while your future or potential employers may not understand what JET is or have a really hard time wrapping their head around the experience, everything that you did on JET can be translated into their language, so to speak, can be translated in such a way that it would make sense for them. Also, okay, maybe I want you to walk away with two things from this webinar, two major things. Every skill is a transferable skill. So there's not one skill that only works for one job. Every skill is in its own right transferable. But does it transfer to your target job is the key here. But every skill is transferable. So don't worry yourself about like, well, is the skill a transferable skill? It is. Every skill is transferable, but is it transferable to the job that you're going after? That's the question. And really what you need to do in order to make JET make sense for your target employers is to think about, what do I have in my skill and strengths arsenal that an employer wants from me in my target job? So that should be kind of the theme that dictates and influences everything that you write in your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, and all the stories that you tell during interviews. Okay, so let's break down how some skills might be transferable. So today's webinar is mostly focused around the folks who are ALTs or previously ALTs, because CIRs generally have an easier time translating their work experience, given that it's more business focused. So for ALTs, we have a bit more of a challenge since it's teaching, and if you're not going into teaching or something adjacent to teaching, it can be a little tough. So let's take a look at some potential transferable skills that an ALT might have. So obviously we're doing a lot of classroom teaching. So classroom teaching itself could translate into something like skills in facilitation, training, public speaking, presentations, leadership. There's a lot going on in classroom teaching. Classroom teaching isn't just one singular skill in a silo. There's a lot that goes into it that makes it that makes you good at it, right? So that's some potential transferable skills that come from classroom teaching. Internationalization as a skill or that you may have exhibited during your work as an ALT, that could translate into something like cross-cultural engagement, cross-cultural communication, cross-cultural sensitivity, or even community outreach. There's as well, a lot going on in internationalization or cross-cultural engagement, by making connections across cultures. So, and that can be highly valued in a lot of different jobs. Team teaching. We've got some collaboration going on there. We've got cross-functional engagement. Cross-functional engagement if you are working with maybe not a teacher that might not be the English teacher. Maybe you had a special class like crossover class where you're working with other teachers. There's a lot of potential ways that you may be been cross-functionally engaging or collaborating. Lesson planning, if you did your lessons, that would involve transferable skills like planning, presentations, coordination. There's a lot going on there. And maybe you helped your students with speech contest preparation. So that would look like coaching, mentoring, also leadership. So that's another really transferable skill that's going on there. All right, so let's also take a look at CIRs. So you guys are probably doing a lot of translating. Obviously, that translates to translating. There's some business needs assessment going on there. You need to know what the end goal of the document is that you're translating, right? So you check in on that first. That would be a business needs assessment. Stakeholder engagement. Your clients are probably the people at the prefectural office. And so you're checking in with them, you're engaging with them to understand what their needs are for what you're translating. And then obviously the big aspect of communications. So corporate communications, employee communications, community communications, there's lots going on there. Internationalization for CIRs, similarly, cross-cultural engagement, communication sensitivity, community outreach, very similar to what it would be for an ALT. International exchange programs, if you were hosting some exchanges or participating or coordinating, there's some program development happening there. There's some planning happening there. Certainly there's event planning as well as stakeholder engagement again. So stakeholder engagement would be, again, working with your clients to understand what they want and what the end goal is of the actual program that you're helping them pull off. And if you did some language teaching or training yourself, again, very similar to the ALT, that's facilitation, training, public speaking, presentations, leadership. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that our skills that we build or sharpen in the JET program can translate and cross over to other jobs in the future after we've returned or if we plan to stay in Japan. Oh, and finally, hosting international guests. That would be like government relations, international relations. All right. So now let's take a look at how we might word our experience from JET on our resume. Okay, so I'm going to go through 3 different levels of how this might read on your resume. So this is the beginner level. This is what I most commonly see on JET resumes. So we have our title, time frame, somewhere in Japan, BOE, JET program, and where it was. And then I'll see a couple bullets which are pretty straightforward but don't tell me much. So taught English, participated in community events, judged English speech contests. Okay, so this is very JET specific. There's not a lot of making this make sense to your future employer. It's very factual, which is good, but it doesn't really help the reader imagine or envision what you were actually doing in Japan. And that's the key here with our resume is we want to help the reader, so either the recruiter or hiring manager, develop a vision or a picture in their mind. We want to paint a picture in their mind of us doing our work in Japan on the JET program and how that might look if we were to transfer some of those skills over to our next potential job. So this is a beginner level resume. So not saying a whole heck of a lot, just kind of naming some of the duties, not very exciting. If we were to level up with our resume, this is how it might look. So we're expanding a bit here, as you can see. We're giving a little bit more up front in a small paragraph where we're describing our duties as an ALT, where we are giving some details to the ages or grade levels of the students who we taught, and that we maybe plan some lessons, talk about how the lessons were interactive, and that we also helped our students prepare for speech contests. So then after that, we highlight a few accomplishments. So we're going to get into what bullets serve and how bullets are supposed to behave on a resume. But what these are accomplishments. So we're highlighting some of the best stuff from our time on JET. So we say maybe that we delivered 25 classes a week to 40 students each class. If we were lesson planning, we created and delivered 15 lesson plans each week, let's say. And maybe we were brought in as a judge for some English speech contests. And we were turned to for our expertise in English language. So as you can see, this is much more zhuzhed up. It's telling the reader a lot more. It's telling the reader a lot more in a way that would make sense to most readers. It's still very centered around the actual teaching of an ALT, but it at least makes sense and will help the reader understand what you did on JET. Okay. So now let's get into the powered up version of translating our JET experience. So this is like the big daddy of how I would love to see you talking about your JET experience on your resumes. Okay. So this is assuming that this person is actually going for, let's say, a sales representative job. They've identified that their bridge job or their dream job is to go into sales now. So they've done JET, and they've realized through JET that they really like engaging with people, and they really want to help people make great purchasing decisions, let's say. So we're saying a little bit more about the job, and we're using language that will really translate and resonate well with the target employer for the target job. And I'm going to pick out some of the language specifically that we're using here that will really translate well and resonate well, say, to a sales representative direction. And then we've got a few more accomplishments where we are highlighting our great work wins, let's say, that would resonate really well with the direction of being a sales representative. So let's dig into this a bit more. So I went with the verb facilitated English classes rather than taught. So let's say you're going for a sales job. Facilitating is something that you would do in a sales job. You're facilitating sales, really. So that word would resonate a little more strongly than if you just said taught. You assessed and monitored student needs, let's say. This goes back to assessing and monitoring business needs as maybe a sales representative. I also wanted to draw in the fact that JET is a prestigious program. So I want you guys to remember that JET is a globally recognized and prestigious program. So please make sure that you do yourself justice and highlight that you were accepted into this very competitive program. So we bring this in. And what this is doing as well for a sales representative role in this example is it's really highlighting that this person is possibly able to contend with some competition. Sales could be a competitive type of job. So that's something that this is telling the reader as well. We mentioned how this person had an engaging classroom environment. So this is really great to emphasize relationship building abilities as well as keeping energy high, which is important as a sales rep. So that's also what we brought in here. And this is just a fun pretend example that I came up with. But a lot of us, a lot of you, maybe came up with really unique ideas for lessons that you may not realize has some crossover or actually demonstrates your understanding or passion for your next job or next career direction. So in this pretend example, this person actually created like an English marketplace where he had the students engage in buying and selling and negotiation English, maybe not negotiation, that's a bit advanced, but buying and selling, discussion and conversation, which also ties back to the direction of wanting to be, say, a sales representative. So really what I want to drive home here is that JET is not just teaching. JET is not just repeating things in English. JET is not just sitting at the BOE. JET is so much more than that. And it translates to so much more than I think most of us realize. I certainly didn't realize it at the time when I was job searching upon my return. But there is so much crossover, so much ability to translate and transfer the knowledge and skills and strengths that you gained through this program. So just make sure that when you are writing your resume, that you're putting yourself kind of in the shoes of the reader and thinking, how would I, with no understanding of JET, best come to understand the work that was done by this person. We'll just talk a bit more about translating. So translating our accomplishments and the work that we've done on JET is best done with a framework that I call the 5 R's. So, and you saw this in action in the previous 3 slides. So we're really reframing the work that we do or did on JET so that it's relevant to our target job, target direction. It relates to our target job, target direction. It reinforces the skills and strengths that are required and desired of us in the target job. And it resonates with the target employer. So it really speaks their language. It doesn't speak JET language, it speaks our target employer's language. Okay, and where we get a lot of our cues and clues for how to reframe accomplishments, how to make sure things are relevant, how to make sure they resonate and reinforce strengths and skills are found in the job postings. So when we have identified our target job, we really want to study and scrutinize job postings so we can get a really strong idea of what our target employers want and require from us so that we can write our resumes in a targeted way. Okay, so that was a lot of stuff that we covered so far. I want to check in with you guys in the chat, see how everyone's doing. How are you guys doing? Can you let me know in the chat? Love to hear how things are going. If any questions have come up for you guys, would love to hear. Just checking the chat here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Fantastic. Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that you're enjoying this. Hello, Brian. Thanks for joining. Fantastic to hear that English Marketplace is something that has been done before. I appreciate that, Michael. So I'm just going to pop up what Michael said here. Yeah, that's my worry, and it makes me sad because when Jets think that JET is less than what it is, because it's so life-changing, and it really, like, I honestly firmly believe that JET made me a better professional, and I was in a totally wildly different field at the time. I was in finance. It made me better at engaging with clients because it gave me a patience and an ability to communicate that I would not have had had I not gone on Jet. So thank you so much for that. Fantastic. Ray, how much is too many details? So probably the version of the powered up description of Jet, I would say maxed out the amount of information that I would give about Jet. So basically, when we're talking about a job, we would really want to aim for a small description of that job and its mandate and our responsibilities in that small paragraph that I showed you earlier, maybe about 4 lines max for that paragraph. And then we follow it up with maybe 3 to 5 bullets that highlight accomplishments. And we're actually going to go in the next few slides, we're going to take a look at kind of the bones of a resume, like how it would likely look. And you will see that the structure that I'm proposing has a small paragraph, about 4 lines, followed up by 3 to 5 bullets highlighting accomplishments. So we'll take a look at that right now. Fantastic. Okay, Dean, that's great. So glad to hear that's helping. Yes, Claudette. So you will have, right now this is being recorded onto YouTube. So, and tomorrow night after YouTube's done its processing, actually probably for folks in Japan tomorrow morning, I'm going to be sending out the replay link again, but the same link you're using to access right now will also be usable for the replay. So you can revisit it indefinitely, forever, until my channel goes away, which hopefully is never. All right. Okay, so let me go back to the presentation and yeah, let's get even deeper into this. Okay, let's talk a bit about modern resumes, how they look. We're going to take a look at some actual, like I said, resume bones. So modern resumes have a fresh and modern look. We achieve a fresh and modern look largely through the use of sans serif font. So the font I'm using right now on my slides is an example of a sans serif font. Times New Roman is an example of a serif font. So I'm not a big stickler anymore over font, but if you want to give it your resume an instant kind of facelift, change from like Times New Roman to a serif font, or sans serif font rather. So like Calibri Light. Calibri Light is actually my favorite font. You could also use like the font I have here is Railway, which is an aftermarket font. You could use Verdana, Franklin Gothic. There's a variety of fonts you can use. Also, a modern resume does not use only bullets. So we want to avoid the bullet barf. When we use only bullets on our resume, we lose a lot of the emphasis that we're going for. Bullets are to be used strategically and sparingly to highlight the best stuff that we've done in our careers. And when we use all bullets, it's effectively like highlighting an entire page of a textbook. So nothing jumps out. So we want to use them strategically, and we'll take a look at a resume shortly. So we want to either use a full 1 page or a full 1 page of 2 pages. Good typo, Kamara. Full 1 page or full 2 pages. So I think a lot of the returners on the call or on the webinar tonight are going to have a 1-page resume. For the folks who have returned some time ago, the alumni, you're probably looking at a 2-page resume. So let's get into some guidelines around page length. And please note, these are guidelines. I'm going to stress that. So if you have less than 5 years of work experience in your target profession, you'll probably have a 1-page resume. If you have more than 5 years of experience in your target job, you'll probably have a 2-page resume. I'll stress again, this is a guideline only. Your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be to tell the stories that you need to tell in the right way. So if you have to go on to a 2-page resume, do it. I would rather you go on a 2-page resume rather than jamming a ton of resume content into 1 page so that it makes the reader's eyes bleed. We want to have some white space, and we want to have you know, it needs to be comfortable looking, comfortable to read. If you are going to use 2 pages, please use the full 2 pages. If you're going to use 1 page, please use the full 1 page. Commit to the page length, whatever it may be. The goal of the modern resume, though, is that the reader can get important information fast. So you may have heard of the 6-second scan rule. So recruiters are sizing you up in 6 seconds. Now, 6 seconds in recruiter land is way different than 6 seconds for someone who doesn't read resumes regularly. So recruiters can get a lot out of your resume in that short time frame. So, but we still need to dish it up. Like, we need to give it to them the way they need to get the information, and the resume structure we'll look at will give them that. And a modern resume really emphasizes and is ample with accomplishments, and we'll talk more about that too. Okay, so this is the structure of a 1-page resume that I tend to recommend for folks who have not been out of school for so long. Like, if you join JET right out of school, right out of university, and JET was your kind of first professional job, then this is probably the structure you're going to go for. Education comes before work experience for more recent grads. As you accumulate more work experience, that education section is going to fall down to the bottom of the page rather than the top, or onto page 2 as you get really experienced. So this is like what a 1-page resume would look like. This is what a 2-page resume would look like. So this is for the more experienced folks. As you can see, education is the last thing on page 2. And yeah, so as you can see as well with the professional experience section, we're going for a short paragraph. Here I have 3 lines of a paragraph followed up by 4 potential bullets for accomplishments. So that's, you know, these are guidelines. Our priority here is that we're not kind of overwhelming the reader with too much information, but we're giving them enough so that they can envision us in our target job. All right. So this is just a zoomed in version of the resume. Now, please remember, this is being recorded so you can revisit this. And I think we're at the 42-ish minute mark. So please do revisit this. If you need to, you can pause the video later on so you can get a stronger idea of the structure of a resume that I propose and how to emulate it. So this is just a zoomed in version of a 2-page resume. And this is page number 2. Let's talk about structure and formatting a little bit in detail. So I really, really recommend starting with a blank Word document and trying to build it to look like the structure that I just showed you. Templates are often a trap. So the problem with templates that we find on the internet is a lot of times they are not optimized for a human to read. They're super colorful. They've got lots of like fancy things going on, lots of images. That's really not optimal for how a human actually reads. And those super designy resumes also give the impression that you may have something to hide. And we definitely don't want to give that impression. So when we're building our resume, we're putting our name right at the top. We can bold it, make it large, center it, right justify it. Doesn't really matter where your name shows up other than it needs to be at the top of the page. Right under your name, you want to include your contact information. And please do hyperlink your email and hyperlink your LinkedIn profile URL. So the reason that I'm recommending you hyperlink these is so you're making it easy for the reader to just click once and go send you an email. Click once and go to your LinkedIn profile. We want to make it really easy for them. Okay. And I have a video on my YouTube channel about hyperlinking in your resume. You can check that out after this webinar. And then underneath your contact information, you can include, or underneath your name even, you can include a title for your resume. So the title is the role or position to which you're applying, typically. So the title of your resume is something you're going to update with every single job application. So we were looking at that sales representative example earlier. So for them, maybe what they're applying to is sales representative. So at the top of their resume, underneath their name or underneath their contact information, it's going to say sales representative. Or perhaps they're applying to an account executive role. Account executive, it'll say. So we're going to be updating that. And what that does, what the title does at the top of our resume, is it really primes the reader for how they should be interpreting your resume, how they should be reading it, from what lens should they read all the great information you have in your resume. And it also identifies the job that you're applying to. So the title is really important. After the title, you'll include a small professional summary paragraph. We do not want objective statements. So the resume is about, while it's about you, while it's your stories, everything you share in the resume is written towards the reader. So I've done this. Let's say I've accomplished this in my job, which will tell you, reader, that I can do the same for you. This is the value that I can create for you. These are the solutions that I can bring to you or create for you. So the professional summary is a small paragraph at the top of your resume that explains the type of professional you are, what you're known for doing as a professional, the solutions that you're known for creating as a professional. And we'll also talk briefly about your top strengths. So whether that be in leadership, communication, client service, whatever it may be. Following the professional summary, you're going to have a skills section. You can use columns for that. You don't need to use columns for that, but what you definitely cannot use on your resume in any way, shape, or form at any time, any portion of your resume is a text box. So I don't get, I'm not much of a stickler for certain formatting things, but text boxes I am a big stickler about. You can't use a text box on your resume because your resume, when you're applying online, it will go through what's called applicant tracking software, or an ATS. And that's like project management or CRM software that recruiters or hiring managers use to follow your application through its whole life cycle. That software can't read text boxes for some reason. And so whatever's contained in a text box shows up as blank. I have seen a lot of resumes where contact information is in a text box. That makes it so it'll be hard for someone to get in touch with you, or you'll be forced to re-enter the information. It's really inconvenient for you. So no text box. But skills can be in columns, or they can be centered up. On my YouTube channel, I have 2 videos on how to create either skill columns or the easiest way to create your skills section on your resume, which is centering them. So check those out. And your experience section, we're keeping it chronological. Your dates are on the right-hand margin. I have a video on how to align your dates on the right-hand margin as well. After experience, you'll have community involvement, and then your education section. Now, the education section will move up ahead of experience if you're a fairly recent grad. And yes, I have a lot of videos on formatting and formatting mistakes. You can check those all out on my channel. Okay, so let's take a look at accomplishments. So accomplishments are the most important part of your resume. They are the meat of your resume. I cannot emphasize enough how important accomplishments are on your resume. So on the 1-page resume, I've circled where these accomplishments might live. On the 2-page resume, this is just the first page, I've circled where they might live. So again, we've got that small paragraph followed up by bullets to highlight accomplishments. And so when we were looking at the powered up version of writing about JET, Those bullets, those 5 bullets at the bottom, those are accomplishments. And that's how we stand out on our resume. So accomplishments, what are accomplishments made of? They are our work wins. So that's why it's so important to track our work wins on an ongoing basis. There are accomplishments. Accomplishments show that you're qualified. They demonstrate what you have that an employer wants. They use the 5R framework that we talked about before. So that was to reframe, let's say, JET experience so that it is relevant and relates to your target job, and it reinforces required and desired strengths, as well as resonates with the target employer. Accomplishments focus on positive outcomes. And with accomplishments, you may have heard about quantifying accomplishments. So the reason that we like to quantify accomplishments, and I'll show you a few examples here, the reason that we like to do that is because numbers give the reader a much faster idea of the impact of our work than words might. But the challenge is that not everything can be quantified. Not all of our accomplishments can be quantified. And sometimes when trying to quantify, we can actually run the risk of diminishing our work or showing that we're not as qualified as we need to be. So to give you an example, one of my clients had a quantifiable accomplishment on his resume that said closed 3 new clients in whatever year. And I was like, 3 clients, that doesn't really sound like much. And then I asked him, how much revenue did these clients represent? And he's like, over $100 million. Okay, now we're having a totally different conversation. So he was quantifying the wrong thing. He was quantifying 3 clients when he should have been quantifying the $100 million of revenue. So he diminished his work greatly with that accomplishment. So when you are quantifying, you want to make sure that it's reflecting you in the best light possible. If you can't quantify in such a way that it does look positive, or you can't quantify in such a way that it makes sense even, then focus on the outcome and the impact of the accomplishment and not the numbers. And so I have a video on my YouTube channel about accomplishments, writing accomplishments specifically. And I also have an article on JobScan with examples of non-quantifiable accomplishments. So you can check that out as well. And another thing that we really want to avoid on our resume is JET jargon. So ALT, CIR, BOE, we want to avoid that stuff. No one's going to know what ALT means. No one's going to know what CIR means. And certainly no one will know what BOE means. So if you, I would just say avoid those acronyms altogether, spell them out, the words out completely. All right. Okay, so let's talk about some common resume mistakes that are going to get in the way of you getting interviews. So not being clear on what your target job is before writing your resume. Even if it's your bridge job, you got to be clear on what it is. You just have to be. You have to be clear on it so that you can know how to write your resume in a targeted way. Another problem is trying to use one resume for multiple types of jobs. This does not work. If you have the thought of, I'd like to keep my options open, that means you're not clear enough on your target job. Or I don't want to pigeonhole myself in one direction. That means you're not clear on your target job. So get clear on that target job, even if it's a bridge job. If you can't narrow it down beyond more than a few different jobs, then you're going to be in a multiple resume scenario, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not ideal, but it's not a bad thing. So if you do find that you're entertaining 3 very different or more very different types of jobs, just make sure that you've written a unique resume for each of those directions. Another thing that'll get in your way is emphasizing responsibilities and not accomplishments. The reason for this is when we talk about responsibilities, the reader just can't get a clear idea or vision of us doing the work that they're hiring for. Accomplishments, on the other hand, can. And again, not showing you're qualified for the job. Yeah, so we should make sure that we're really spelling it out clearly on our resume, how we're qualified for a job. Don't leave anything to chance. Don't leave anything to assumption. Don't think that anything is obvious, because it's not. Okay, so let me go into the chat. Want to check in with you guys. How is everyone doing? Any questions that are coming up for you guys? Please let me know. All right. Sion, let's see. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I keep my education before my experience. Does it matter? I personally don't like having to scroll the way down to find applicants' education. What's considered a fairly recent grad? So I would say if you have 5 years of work experience or more, that you should put your education near the bottom. Education is important, but experience is more important. So we don't, if we're more experienced, we don't want to delay for the reader actually getting to learning about that experience. So to your point, you don't like having to scroll the way down to find applicants' education, for sure. But if it's an experienced professional, they're doing themselves a disservice if they're making the reader scroll to find the experience, because the experience is more important than the education as you become a more experienced individual. So I hope that helps. How do I feel about selective bolding? Yeah, you know, that's an interesting question. So I used to bold selectively, and I realized as I was looking at more and more and more resumes that it actually disrupts the reading flow. So I wouldn't recommend bolding any information beyond like headers, subheaders, or dates or credentials, because we don't want to make anything hard on the reader's eyes, which that could. And regular resume readers have the ability to get the important information they need without the bolding. We don't need to draw extra attention to important details. They can get it. They're very proficient in getting that important information. So I would not selectively bold. Thank you so much, Marlene. I appreciate that. Caitlin, are we going to talk about cover letters? Unfortunately, I can't fit cover letters into this conversation, but on my website, under free stuff, yeah, at kamaratoffolo.com, under free stuff, I have a cover letter guide that you can sign up for, cover letter guide and checklist, and that will walk you through how to write a great cover letter. So make sure to grab that. Maxwell, for the contact information, is it necessary to have a mailing address, or is the email LinkedIn sufficient? So great question. For contact information, we want to have city and state or province or prefecture. And we also want to have phone. We want to have email, which is hyperlinked, and we want to have LinkedIn, which is hyperlinked. We do not want a full mailing address in our resume. And the reason for this is because it's private information that we can hold confidential, and it just isn't necessary anymore. So no need for a full mailing address. What if we did summer jobs or internships during college? By all means, put those in your experience section, for sure, for sure, for sure. If I've had part-time jobs before leaving for JET, should I include those as well? I would, yes, I would include those in your work experience section on your resume. If they are slightly unrelated to the direction which you're headed, or I might put them in an other experience section. In the one-page resume, there was a work experience and an other experience section, which displays just that strategy. So it's like kind of unrelated work experience. And then on top of that is more related work experience. So yeah, go after this webinar, go back to the video and pause it around, I think I said it was the 42-minute mark, and have a real strong look at the resume structure. All right. Addresses on resumes. What about if you're moving to a new place and undecided? Marlena, can you clarify for me? Are you meaning you're moving to a new place and undecided about what that place is or where that place is? Just let me know and I will answer that question. All right, let's get back to the presentation. Okay, so clearing up career gaps. Okay, so this is probably more so for any alumni who are tuning in who may have been laid off due to the pandemic, but also we're affected by having lag time between finishing JET and returning from JET. So you're not alone in having a career gap. Career gaps are very normal, and they happen to most people, I would say at this point, especially with the pandemic. So it might have been the lag time from JET, might be pandemic-related layoff. To you, your career gap reason, I shouldn't even say to you and most other people, your career gap reason may be obvious, like if it was pandemic-related, but please do explain it. Please spell it out. Please make it clear, because there are so many times that I have heard of employers saying, well, I noticed this person hasn't been working since March 2020. Why might that be? Well, hello, sir, that's pandemic related. Maybe you should clue in. If it's not something that has impacted the reader, then it's not on their radar. So please make it obvious for them and clear. One line or a couple bullets to fill the gap, so to speak, is sufficient. And we're going to take a look at a couple images of how this might look. You want to emphasize how you've been spending the time other than job searching. So job searching itself isn't really worthy of filling the gap, but things like upskilling, taking some self-directed programs, doing some self-directed projects that are especially related to your current or target job direction. Also, moving is something else that fills the gap. So moving from Japan back to your hometown or wherever, that is also something that would fill the gap. And volunteering is another thing that fills the gap. But job searching itself isn't something I would recommend putting on your resume to fill any career gaps. I have so many career gap videos on my YouTube channel because it is among the most asked questions for good reason. So this might be how filling the career gap would look for you if you were returning from JET and you had some lag time. So I have a typo here, but ready to step into next role as whatever your target job is following completion of JET program contract, currently engaged in professional development in skill. You could name some, let's say Coursera courses you're taking or LinkedIn Learning, whatever comes to mind that you are working on. And then this is a potential way for someone who is laid off due to the pandemic, how they might want to approach explaining their career gap. Again, very straightforward, exploring next stages in career following restructuring due to COVID-19 or pandemic, and currently completing or completed education in whatever. So we just need to show that we've been filling the gap as productively as possible. All right, so now that we're in the pandemic, now that remote work is so vital or so prevalent, we need to show that we are good at tech. And that is because tech enables us to work remotely, and it's never been more important. Collaboration tools are kind of like the new prerequisite tech that we need to show that we can use on our resume. Things like things I'm thinking of include G Suite, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Slack. Those are the tools, the collaboration tools that come to mind. And we really, again, take our clues and cues for tech tools that we might need to have proficiency in by paying close attention to our target job postings. So they'll name certain tech in the target job postings. And if it's named, then we need to make sure, if it's named and we're proficient in it, then we need to make sure that we're naming that tech in our skills section on our resume. For tech-heavy roles, you might want to consider a technical acumen section as well, in addition to a skills section. I typically see technical acumen sections for folks who are in project management, product management, very tech-focused roles like software development, data analytics, things like that. And you can also reinforce that you're good with the tech by showcasing this in accomplishments. And I'm going to talk to you more and show you some ideas for using or demonstrating skills in tech through your accomplishments. So as I mentioned, accomplishments are really the meat of your resume. They reinforce skills that you claim in your skills section or in your technical acumen section. And to give you an idea as well of what to write in your accomplishments, you'll want to write with the pandemic in mind. So these examples are mostly for alumni, for JET alumni. You may have had some of these examples in your own work. And employers are really curious about how you adapted to the pandemic in your work. And so you might want to talk about ways that you may have helped your team transition to remote work, how you led your team through uncertain times, how you helped customers navigate new ways of doing business, how you maybe minimize business disruptions, how you maintain service levels, or maybe how you use tech to make something better. So those are just some ideas of some prompts for your writing your accomplishments on your resume if you want to integrate some initiative, some ways and examples of how you took initiative around the pandemic and adapting to the pandemic. And remote work. A lot of us want to work remotely or will be working remotely. So if you have already worked remotely, make it clear on your resume. For example, maybe you worked remotely from Waterloo to Toronto, Ontario, working remotely from home office. And where you're going to indicate this is in the location section, which is just kind of beside or saddled up beside the company names for each of your roles. So if you've worked remotely, make sure that the reader understands that you have. Okay, so we're going to take a pause. We're going to take a 5-minute break now. All right, so as we're taking this 5-minute break, if you have any questions, feel free to get them into the chat. I will get to them for sure. And until such time, let's take a 5-minute break, grab a coffee, grab a tea, take a bio break, whatever you need. And we will get back to it shortly. See you soon. All right, and we're back. Okay. So hope that gave you a bit of time to recharge. Let's get right back into this. We still have a lot to cover. All right. So, but before I do, I saw some questions and notes in the chat. So let's just get those covered. Okay. Marlena, back to your question about location. So you were undecided on your location. So basically, with the location, we got to know where we're going before we can apply to a job there, right? So it is important that you have identified your location. If you're entertaining a few different locations, a few different cities, then you need to be very sure that, let's say, if you're applying to a job in New York, that your location says New York, or that you are relocating to New York at such and such a time. You can put that note there at the top in your contact information. But no employer will be employing you if they don't know if you will be around. So you got to be very clear on where you're planning to go before you start applying for jobs. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to narrow down where you're going to go. With the kind of with remote work being such a major thing, they will still need to know that you are able to be within the country in which, let's say you are American and they're posting a role that is remote within America, within the US, I should say, then they need to know that you're going to be in the US. Otherwise, there's a lot of regulation issues that can come up. So really get clear on where you plan to live first, then you can start looking at actual jobs. All right, good question about personal reasons for having a gap. For example, raising children, helping with family. So there are a lot of ways to approach the career gap explanation. So if you're raising family, then you just say, raised children full-time, ready to step into new role as blah, blah, blah. If you were caring for family, then you can say, if you feel like sharing, that you were caring for family or helping family with member with health issues, ready to step into new role, doing whatever. If you personally had an illness yourself, you would want to keep that confidential and instead say that you took a temporary leave and that you're now ready to step into a role as whatever your target role is. All right, so let's get into this. All right. Okay. So now let's get into LinkedIn. Lots to cover here. So LinkedIn, like I said before, LinkedIn is a non-negotiable. Like, you have to have a LinkedIn profile. It's a very important marketing tool to highlight your own story and personal brand. It's really, really important to have a presence on LinkedIn. It is a primary tool used by recruiters and hiring managers to find you, to hire you, to give you a job. So you got to be there. And it's more engaging than a resume, which is great. What it is absolutely not, LinkedIn, what LinkedIn absolutely is not, is a digital resume. It is not your resume. Okay, we'll talk about this more in detail. So when we're focused on our LinkedIn and building our LinkedIn profile, we want to look at what I call the WWW approach. We want to go for warmth. So we want to show our human side on our LinkedIn. This is where we are really wanting to come across as a person or a future coworker that people want to know. You want to tell your story. You want to use your words. When I say words, I'm talking about keywords, key search terms. What do you want to be found for? And we want to share our wins, our accomplishments, what we were talking about so much earlier in the presentation. So we're going to highlight accomplishments and highlight strengths. All right, let's first cover our profile picture. So we want to look human, for sure. Profile pictures are a must. So some folks are a little iffy on putting profile pictures, but the thing with putting our profile pictures is if we don't have them, it's a little suspicious. Like people wonder what we're hiding. And the great thing about putting a profile picture is it helps add to a know, like, and trust factor. Words are important, but seeing that someone is a real live human is also very important. It is not a beauty contest. So it's not like I have to go get my hair done and makeup done and I have to buy a new outfit and I have to have a professional photographer take my picture. Absolutely not. You don't need to worry about all of those things. It's just showing up as a real live human. We don't want to use selfies or travel photos or wedding photos or anything like that. These become obvious when they're cropped. And we also don't want to have a distracting background. So when we are taking our profile photos, you want to have someone else other than yourself take it, or you could use a tripod, that's fine. And you want to stand against a neutral background so there's nothing distracting behind you. And you just look at wear your usual professional attire so that you're comfortable. If you don't regularly wear suits, don't wear a suit because it's going to come across as stiff and uncomfortable in the picture. So wear your usual professional attire, stand against a neutral background, look right at the camera and smile. And that's it. It's that easy, that simple. We've also got the option for a background picture. Now, don't look at mine as an example. I'm just showing you where it lives. I am not a graphic designer by any means, and I'm trying to jam a ton of info in there, so it's not the best. But the background photo is an opportunity for you to highlight your brand. So there's lots of possibilities. We really don't want to neglect this opportunity. And you can use it to showcase highlights about yourself. So some more strengths or skills. There are a lot of great examples of people using that background photo really well across the internet. If you Google like great background photos or examples, I think there's been like a Forbes article on it or something. There are a lot of great examples of people using that background photo or background picture to its full, to like taking full advantage of that space. You want to make sure it's on brand for you. So we don't want to use landscape photos for no reason. We don't want to use cityscape photos that don't make sense. You want to make sure it's on brand for you and your target direction as a professional. Some places to get some free stock photos. Unsplash, Pexels, Raw Pixel. You can check those places out and get some free stock photos there. So lots to choose from, and just make sure that you are cropping the photo to the proper specifications for that background photo on LinkedIn. Your headline. All right. So the headline is where you really use your words. So headlines are a must on your LinkedIn profile. They've just upped the ability, or just upped the character limitation to 220 characters. So you get a lot more room to say a lot more, but you still want to use that space wisely. And what we really want to go for with our headline is we want to entice people to click and learn more about us. So we also want to include keywords. So specialties we want to be found for, things we're an expert in. And the formula that I like to suggest to kick off your headline is something like what you do plus the main solution you create. So what you do as your target job or target career direction, and what would be the main solution you would create. So an example might be, this is a client services professional. So client services professional, what you do. And then the main solution you create, creating memorable client experiences by delivering award-winning service if you've won an award for it. And then you could follow that up with serving diverse clientele across the globe if that applied to you. So we're saying what we do or what the job is that we want, what the solution is or will be that we'll create, and just we can add a little extra about the types of clients maybe that we serve, or the types of projects that we work on, or the types of products that we sell, or the types of services that we sell. There's so much potential here, but what's really key is naming the type of professional you are, plus backing it up with the main solution you create. That's really the key to a well-written headline. All right, let's talk about the about section, or what's previously known as the summary section. This is where you get to tell your story, and I mean really tell it. So you now get 2,200 characters, so you get to say a lot here. 2,200 characters is about a full page in Word. You get to tell your career story, like where your career has taken you. What are your top career accomplishments? What are you passionate about? What are you known for? Who would you love to serve? Now that you've returned from JET, where do you want to go next in your career? So lots that you can share and talk about in the summary section. And what can you offer that's unique and different? And on every summary, I really recommend a call to action to connect. So wrapping up your summary at the bottom with just something that welcomes people to connect with you, a sentence that welcomes people to connect with you. And also I would recommend including your email address, so that, let's say a recruiter tries to reach out to you and for some reason they can't through LinkedIn, at least they have a backup ability to email you instead. So that's a really important thing that recruiters like to see. Okay, let's talk about your experience section. First, let's talk about addressing your JET role in your experience section. So with our JET role, we really want to highlight stories that validate or reinforce or demonstrate our top strengths, particularly in our target direction. So again, we want to make it make sense to our target employer or job with the 5 R's that we said, that we went over before. We can pull in info from our work wins file. That's why this is so important, that work wins file, because it gives you content for your resume and your LinkedIn. And in your JET role description, you can talk about what motivated you to do JET, let's say, or how did JET help you clarify your career path? Or how did JET uniquely position you to add value in your new career direction? Lots that you can share here. Of course, we want to avoid the JET jargon, which we talked about before. Now, when we're addressing the experience section for our other jobs, the approach doesn't differ greatly. Again, we're highlighting stories that validate our top strengths for our target direction, target job. We want to continue making it make sense to our target employer and target job. Just because it might not be JET doesn't mean that we're off the hook for making it make sense to our target job. Again, pulling info from the work wins file. And when you're describing other jobs, you can talk about things like what parts of the job that you particularly love doing. What contributions were you proud of? What did you learn from this job that makes you great at your current career or your target job? So lots of different things that you can talk about. Feel free to really share. This isn't about just highlighting accomplishments. It's about being human and talking about the human side of work. All right, let's get into your skills section on LinkedIn. So your skills section is keywords and your actual skills. We want to focus on that. So certainly we want to give consideration to our transferable skills. With our skills, we want to be specific. And we don't want to forget soft skills like leadership, certain types of communication, client service, things like that. We're going to focus on keywords. And again, keywords are words that recruiters are using, typing into LinkedIn, let's say, to try and find professionals like yourself. And on LinkedIn, LinkedIn gives the best kind of skill real estate to your top 3 skills. So you really want to prioritize the top 3 skills that you list. And you get 50 skill spots in your skills section, so try and use as many of them as possible. We don't want to assess our skill level. So one thing you don't want to do is type like excellent communication skills or strong customer service skills. None of that. It's just communication, whatever the type of communication, or customer service, or report writing, or translate, whatever. We're just listing the skill. And check that LinkedIn didn't screw up on the import. So when I haven't opened, like I was an early adopter for LinkedIn, so I don't know how you set up a new account now, but I think you might import your resume. And so then it does kind of a bit of magic and it tries to pick out skills from your resume. I've seen LinkedIn do this badly so many times. So you really need to check your skills section regularly to make sure that there aren't errors or extra information that is nonsensical, because I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. So with the skills, I do have a deeper dive into the skills section on LinkedIn and how to move things around on my LinkedIn channel. On my YouTube channel, I do have a video on skills. Okay, we just like flew through that. So I just want to check in on the chat. How are you guys doing? Please let me know in the chat how you're doing. If you have any questions that have come up. Looks like you guys are pretty good. All right, just scrolling up to see if anyone had any questions that I missed. I think we're good. All right, so let's continue on. Okay, so the fun thing with LinkedIn is they keep building new things, new features that I really like, and I think have huge potential for use and can really help you a lot in your job search to stand out. So first thing that I cannot stress enough are your recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. Recommendations are found at the bottom of your profile, or until you get your first recommendation, they won't exist on your profile. So recommendations are LinkedIn gold. They are very important. They are the current day recommendation letters. And you can get a recommendation from anyone who you've worked with professionally. And with recommendation letters, let's say, I think most of us would always ask our boss or previous boss for a recommendation letter. But anybody who wants to write you a recommendation who you've worked with professionally has value to provide in their recommendation. So if it's someone who was your boss, great. They can speak to your work ethic, how amazing you are. If it's a peer, they can speak to what it's like to have you as a coworker and what they admire about you as a professional. If it's someone like a client, they can talk about how great you were at delivering them solutions and service. If it was someone junior to you or someone who you informally mentored, they can talk about your leadership and mentorship abilities. The possibilities are endless for who can write you a recommendation, what they can write it about. So feel free to ask people for recommendations actively, regularly. And if you feel a little weird about asking someone for a recommendation on LinkedIn, what you can do is write one for them first. And usually the law of reciprocity will work itself out and they'll write one in return. Okay, there's the ability to customize your LinkedIn URL. I'm going to get into that and show you. There's a featured section on LinkedIn, which I love. We'll talk about that. There's a name pronunciation tool, which is great. And I use it personally because my name is always confusing. And so let's look at customizing your LinkedIn profile URL. So with LinkedIn profile URLs, the one on the left is probably more representative of how your LinkedIn profile address or URL looks. So in order to ensure uniqueness of profile addresses, LinkedIn appends like nonsensical random letters and numbers after your name. And so we don't need to keep those there. We're able to customize the address so that we don't have to have all of that stuff, all of that extra numbers and letters. And so that's what I have done with mine. I'm just Kamara T now, because I would have liked to get just Kamara, but someone had taken that. But my recommendation in this case is to use your first and last name if it's available. Sometimes if we have a more common name, that's not available to us. And so you might need to insert like a middle initial or like one number after your name or something. The reason we want to customize our LinkedIn profile URL is because it's really great for searchability, for people to find us. Google really likes LinkedIn. If you Google yourself, your LinkedIn profile will probably come up as one of the first 3 Google hits. You can test it out later. So it really just helps us be found more easily. And also it shows great attention to detail if you customize your LinkedIn URL. I do have a video on the whole process of customizing your LinkedIn URL, which I'm sorry, I put link in chat, but I failed to gather these links ahead of time, but they are on my LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, my YouTube channel, which you can take a look at after this webinar. Featured section. This is like my favorite thing right now. So the featured section is underneath your about section on your profile. And the featured section is so great because you can link to anything you'd like that you are really proud of showcasing. So if you have a blog, you can point to a blog. If you have a YouTube channel, you can point to your YouTube channel. If you have something that you wrote for one of the, like for your JET, like your prefectural JET publication, and you want to highlight it, you can link to that. It's so great to act almost as like a portfolio section for anyone. And I think it's just so great. And it's just a really great snapshot for someone who's on your profile of your interests or the ways that you have demonstrated the strengths that you are claiming on your resume and LinkedIn profile. So I would recommend using the featured section. The name pronunciation tool is so good too. So it's on mobile. I don't believe it's on desktop. It's on the mobile app version. And if your name, if people regularly have difficulty pronouncing your name, I would recommend using this because it will really help them make sure that they know how to pronounce your name so they're not nervous to reach out to you. And so that's what you've got here. And basically you can just record your own voice pronouncing your name. It's that simple, it's that easy, but it's very, very helpful. All right, so let's talk a bit about LinkedIn best practices. So we've got a good profile now. How do we want to use LinkedIn going forward? So I firmly believe in the get in, get out method or get in, get out approach on LinkedIn. I don't need or want another social media that is going to suck me in and waste my time. So when I'm on LinkedIn, I get in, do what I want to do strategically, and then I get out. I'm out of there. So when we're using LinkedIn, it's more so about consistency of use rather than duration of time that you're spending in that social media. When we are on LinkedIn and say we are engaging with content or posting content, we want to stay on brand. And what that means when we say on brand is that it relates to our target job, target direction. One of the best ways to use your time on LinkedIn for maximum return, and when I say maximum return, I'm meaning visibility, and positioning yourself as someone who knows their stuff, is to comment on other people's posts and to ask questions. LinkedIn treats commenting on other people's content as a very high value interaction. And so they reward you with more visibility. So you get in front of more people when you post something in the future, when you comment again on other content. And visibility means that you're more apt to be found in order to be a potential candidate for a job. So commenting is a great use of your time on LinkedIn. I would say if you are in the habit of liking or interacting with posts on LinkedIn, that you switch that habit for commenting on posts. It will be more worth your while. Of course, you can certainly create your own content, but you don't have to. Commenting is really, really valuable and important. Okay, so those are the LinkedIn best practices that I recommend. Let's talk about actually connecting with people. So when we connect with others, we want to make sure that we are customizing our connection requests so that people know who we are, how they know us, and why they should connect with us, basically. And so you don't need to get into too much detail when you're customizing your connection requests, but reminding someone how they know how you may have met each other in the past, or why at least you want to connect with the person, what you want to learn from them. Being very, very specific is helpful and will increase the chances of someone connecting or accepting your connection request. This message, this customizing of a connection request message, is done poorly when people write things like, I'd like to add you to my professional network. I see we have a lot of mutual connections. Let's connect. That's just generic and that's just crap networking, in other words. So make sure that you're being very specific when you are sending connection requests. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, send me a connection request and practice on me. All right. Okay, so let's hop over to the chat. How's everyone doing? How are you guys doing? Any questions? Please pop them into the chat if there's anything that you're wondering about. But I'm seeing that the chat's pretty quiet right now, so you're probably just soaking it all in, right? All right. So let's just keep going. Okay, let's talk about job search strategy. Lots to go over here. So the thing with job search strategy is it's not about doing one thing, but many things at the same time. So you may have seen a lot of headlines about, like, network your way into your next job, or how to get a job without applying online, and things that imply that there's something hacky that you can do in your job search, or something that you can do to game the whole job search process. It's not about that. Job search strategy is not, there's no magic to it. It's about consistently doing multiple things and staying committed to doing those things. And we'll talk about what those are. So certainly applying online. So we don't want to stop applying online. It's still very important to apply online. If a job is posted online, it's there to be applied to. And there's no way for you to necessarily skip applying to that job online. But at the same time, we also want to be sure that we are networking actively. Networking is very important to our job search. So we want to make sure we're doing that as well. None of this job search stuff happens in a silo. Applying online and networking are not mutually exclusive. We want to be doing both at the same time. And that's really all it is. It's quite simple. It just requires a lot of commitment. And finally, we want to make sure that when we are applying for jobs, when we are networking, that we're following up. So I want to talk a bit more about that. But first, let's talk about networking. So networking doesn't have to be hard. So networking can feel intimidating. It can feel awkward. It needn't feel like that, and it doesn't need to be difficult. What I would recommend to kind of warm up to the whole idea of networking is to really start in your own backyard. And what I mean by that is JET alumni. So make sure that you're actively networking with JET alumni, with your college and university fellow alumni. Make sure you're connecting there. There are so many great networking events, even during the pandemic. A lot of university alumni groups have moved completely online for their networking events, and there's still a lot of value in attending those. So make sure that you do. Certainly family. You never know who your aunt might know. Friends, former colleagues. And one thing I didn't include on here as well is if you belong to any professional organizations. So let's say you're a project management professional and you're a member of the Project Management Institute, let's say. They have networking going on. If you belong to, let's say, like a marketing professional organization, they have networking events going on as well. So make sure that you're tapping all of those groups that are close to home, essentially, for you, rather than feeling like you're overextending yourself in your networking efforts. We don't want you to burn out. We want you to keep going. So start off easy, slow, and warm up to it. Also, I'd recommend informational interviews. And I hate the term interview because it's not an interview, informational interviews. These are really networking meetings to learn from people who are already in the know. So people who already work for the companies that you want to work for, who are already in the role that you're targeting, who are in potential professions that you are entertaining. Those are the types of people that you want to have informational interviews with. And I'm going to show you a message that I recommend, or you can use and adapt for your purposes. But one thing we really want to be certain that we don't do is ask someone if we can pick their brain. This is a phrase that is very disliked by most people at this point. It's overused and it just doesn't sound nice. Like it just doesn't sound good. And so people get their backs up very quickly when they see pick your brain, because it also implies or it could also infer that it may be a huge time investment on their part. And when we are asking for informational interviews or for someone to help us learn, we're asking for a favor from them. And so we need to be really cognizant of their time and respectful of their time. By asking someone to pick their brain, that's not showing that we respect their time. So this is kind of like a template that you can use and adapt for your purposes for asking for an informational interview. So basically, we are making it super specific. So hi, whatever their name is. I've been admiring your super specific thing that you're doing and would love to get your take on what it's like to work at whatever company or industry they're in and are an expert in. I know you're really busy, but if you could spare 15 minutes, whether it's on phone or Zoom, I'd be so appreciative. Let me know what would be a convenient time to chat. That's it. The key here is that you're being incredibly specific about why you admire them and why you feel that they are an expert who you could learn a lot from. Okay? So that's a potential message that you could use for asking for informational interviews. Next, let's talk about following up. So following up in your job search is one of the most overlooked parts of job searching. So we don't want to overlook it. So there are a few times where we really need to nail that follow-up when we're applying for a job. So this is an example, let's say, of a way that I would recommend following up on a job that you've applied to online. And the key here is noting in the second paragraph where it says, I've applied to the whatever job title posting online. And I've also gone ahead and attached my resume and cover letter to this message as well. So the reason that we are mentioning that in this message is because if we hadn't, we would have been directed back to the online application portal to apply online. We're showing this person, we've already taken the initiative to do this. We're already in the system. We're good to go. we're just following up on this application because we must apply to the job online if it is posted online. It's there for a reason. It's part of the process. There's a lot of regulatory stuff going on behind the scenes, which makes it absolutely necessary that we actually apply for the job online. So make sure to do it. This is following up on having an interview. So this is like a thank you message for following up on an interview. Basically, what you're doing there's two things that you're doing with this message. You are expressing gratitude for the person's time, the interviewer's time, and you're also reiterating fit for the company and the role. So that's really the goal of this follow-up. In terms of continuing to follow up, I would recommend that you do continue to follow up on jobs where you are in the interview process. But what I would caution is that we're never making this about asking for an update where things are in the actual decision-making process. We are just using it as an opportunity to stay top of mind as well as to reiterate fit. And to show that we are really serious about wanting the job. We're not asking for an update on where the decision is at, because that's not really a good use of sending a follow-up message. Okay, so we're nearing the end, guys. We're about to get into into Q&A. So some key takeaways from this whole thing. You want to get really clear on where you're headed. So your target job. You want to take stock of where you've been and track your work wins until you retire. This is something that you need to take on in order to have the easiest time with creating your resume, writing a new resume, updating your resume, asking for a raise, asking for a promotion. All sorts of things are coming from this ongoing tracking of your work wins. You want to translate your skills and stories so they make sense to your target job, and beware of jet jargon. And you want to use multiple job search tactics together. So you're not just applying online, not just networking, but you're doing all of it at the same time. All right, let's give you some more resources. So as mentioned, I mentioned so many additional videos on my YouTube channel. Just search Kamara Toffolo and I should pop up, or Kamara Careers maybe. There is a very famous NFL player, I think, with the last name Kamara, who just came on the scene. And so you'll probably get a lot of videos about him. So maybe Kamara and Careers at the same time. I post new videos on my YouTube channel every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern. I go live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern with a Q&A, but I also am interviewing other professionals and experts in the career and job search and recruitment and HR space. Lots of great interviews, so hopefully you can join on some future Thursdays. The live is on YouTube and LinkedIn. As mentioned earlier, when asked about cover letters, I do have a free cover letter guide. It's on my website. Just look for free stuff on my website. And well, you guys signed up for this webinar, so I will be sending you reminders for my videos as they come up in the future. And sorry, I know I flew through that. And today's recording will be emailed out to you tomorrow. Again, it's the same link that you're using to access this live, but I will be emailing it out again tomorrow. And please do share it with other Jets. I hope that this was helpful for you guys, and I hope that they would find it helpful as well. So please do just share the link with them and they can watch it. This recording will be on my channel indefinitely. All right, game over. Not really, game's just starting, right? So what questions do you have that we haven't addressed? All right, heading back to the chat. Yes, Dean, I know. Let me know what I can clarify for you. I know this is a lot of information. And again, you can feel free to revisit this recording at any time. Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that. I think we've both really made a lot of great connections with JET alumni, lots of great opportunities through JET alumni connections. So absolutely. Thank you, Felicia. I appreciate you reinforcing that part as well. All right. Question. Is the let recruiters know I'm open to a new job feature on LinkedIn useful? If so, how can we best use it? Yes, I think it is useful. So there's a feature on LinkedIn, and it's usually, I think it's usually noticeable right under your headline. There should be a prompt that says, let recruiters know you're open or something like that. And basically the best way to use it is to make sure that you've identified your target jobs and the possible names of target positions, like the titles of target positions. So let's say it's that sales rep that we were looking at before. So they might be looking at positions with the title of sales representative, account executive, account manager, let's say maybe customer service representative, perhaps. So they need to have identified the top 5 potential job titles that they're going after. They all could be the same type of job functionally, but they might have varying title names. Then they need to identify, then what you want to do is identify, I believe you're allowed 5 potential locations. And my recommendation when you identify 5 potential locations is that you open up the geography as much as possible. So let's say, New York. Let's use that as an example. We want to open it up to New York and not just say Brooklyn, because we don't necessarily want to be that super hyper specific when we have the ability to work in anywhere in New York City, I mean. So we want to open up the geography and identify 5 potential cities that we would be willing to work in. And then we also want to identify the types of jobs that we would take in terms of, is it full-time, part-time, contract? And then also I believe there's a remote option that you can select there too. So if you're willing and able to work remotely, you'll want to make sure that you check that off too. So that's really it. There is the ability to add a green banner to your photo where you indicate that you're open to work. It's up to you if you want to use that or not. It's not something that I encourage or discourage. It's up to you if you want to use it. But the most important part when you're using that open to work feature or let recruiters know you're open to work is that you select the let recruiters know you're open to work part, because that's searchable for them. Hope that helps. All right, let's see. Just scrolling up. A few came in. Okay. Thank you everyone for your kind words. Yes, please do check out Kasia. Yeah, Kasia and I had a great chat on Thursday night. So thank you so much, Felicia. Thank you, Claudette. I appreciate that. Let's see. Here we go. I'm currently applying for project management software developer roles and building out a website to showcase my portfolio. Would I put a general copy of my resume on my website or wait until last? Yeah, I would keep your resume off of your website typically. You can include bits and pieces, but a resume is a confidential document. And so I like to limit the number of places that it lives. The reason for that is we don't want people plagiarizing anything, because that is a possible exposure for us. If you have a portfolio on your website, that's a really nice sampling of your work. So that serves one purpose. LinkedIn serves another purpose. And then, yes, if you're asked for your resume at that point, then you can provide it when asked. But yeah, I would leave your resume off of your website. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. Let's see, Michael. If there's someone we've connected with on LinkedIn or even on other mediums and we haven't really given them the clearest picture of our direction and skills, is it too late to reach out again? No, I would never say it's too late. No. So if you're connected with them and you haven't really, like if you've engaged a little bit and you've indicated that you weren't quite clear on where you're headed, that's totally fine. And then when you do identify what you're going after clearly, then you can be like, you can touch base with them and let them know that you've identified clearly that you want to go after A or B or whatever it may be. I don't think it's ever too late because jobs are constantly, like job postings are constantly coming and going off the market. And so things are changing. And so it's totally normal that your own direction would be changing as well. So no, it's never too late. All right. Let's see. Any more questions? All right. Felicia, thank you so much. As an alum, the LinkedIn info was especially useful. I'm glad you thought so. During the pandemic, is there any advice you would offer if it's difficult to get your bridge job during this time? So I would, if you are unemployed right now, I would recommend that you certainly continue networking. If you can't get your bridge job, what would be your kind of backup bridge job, and work towards that. Yeah, spend your time networking for sure. That's very important, as well as try and upskill if you can. So taking free or low cost courses where you can, taking on or starting your own projects where you can add to your portfolio or body of work. I would do that as well. And also volunteering if you have time. But work experience is not necessarily gained just through paid experience. So wherever you can find it through self-directed projects, volunteering, upskilling through courses, that's how I would best fill my time, so that you are making yourself more and more and more and more and increasingly more qualified for that bridge job that you're going after. I hope that helps. If I didn't understand or answer the question properly, please let me know. Ray, thank you for joining me. What general skills would you recommend to level up while on a pandemic break or desk warming? So general skills, I'm not sure that I would recommend leveling up on general skills, because there aren't any like sets of general skills that work for every single job. But I would get clear, like I would really think about what your target job is, and then look at what the skills are required of you in those target jobs and focus on those first. You can never, ever go wrong, in my opinion, with upskilling on tech. You can do a lot of totally free training for tech. Depending on the tool, there might be free training available to you, because it's in software companies' best interest to make sure that you can use their software. So if you just search for it, you can get really free or inexpensive training for tech. Yeah, keeping up on tech is the most important thing at this point across the board. If I had to name one thing across the board, it's tech. So just keep working on your tech. Is LinkedIn recommendations something that needs to be activated? I'm looking at my page and I'm not finding it. Yes. So not activated per se, but you do need to request a recommendation and receive one in order for it to show up on your actual profile. So you do that close to the top of your profile. You'll find, let me just navigate to it. Oh, I'm not logged into LinkedIn on this, but close to the top of your profile, you'll see like add profile section or something like that. And you can click on that, look for recommendations, and then you click on the drop down, and it should ask you to request a recommendation. So you'll need to ask for it and receive it in order for it to show up. So that's how you activate it, so to speak. All right, good questions. Thank you, everybody, for your kind words. I've been relearning some skills I learned in university. How could I let an employer know that I want to return to my original career path after a 10-year gap? I was working in other fields. Woo, good question. Okay, so I would say honestly tell them on your cover letter, and tell them why you want to return. I would say the why, I would say whys that aren't really good to share, like money, or career stability or things like that. They want to know, I think it's important to share how you came to the realization that your motivations and passions and strengths really align best in returning to that target or returning to that previous career. So telling them that. So in the cover letter, I would particularly say that. In the resume, what I would be doing is really highlighting the older work experience through the use of a career highlights section, which I would put underneath your professional summary paragraph. So the sections would be your professional summary paragraph, then a career highlights section where you would highlight your older experience. So basically the goal there is to bring possibly experience that's on page 2 up to your first page so that it's more noticeable to the reader, that they read it sooner in your resume, and that it kind of sticks out to them, and really reinforce the strengths and skills that you gained and the accomplishments from that time, and write your entire resume towards that target direction. It doesn't matter that it was in the past, it's now your new target direction. So really keeping that in mind when you're writing your resume. All right, Stephen, is it necessary to have certificates to prove to potential employers that you have completed online courses? I mean, you should have them in your files, but you don't need to provide them unless asked. Are you thinking maybe like Coursera? Like I just took a course on Coursera where I didn't buy the certificate. I just took the free course, but I still completed the course. So I don't think you need to buy the certificate, but be able to produce something that proves that you completed the course. Yes, but only keep that in your own files until you're asked. You don't need to proactively give them a bunch of certificates. I hope that helps answer your question. All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. All right. Very good. Okay, so that is that. So if you want to connect with me, feel free to. I'm Kamara Toffolo everywhere on all the social except for Facebook and TikTok. I don't hang out there, or Snap. None of the cool places that the kids hang out. I'm just on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. So please feel free to connect with me there. And I'm so glad you guys found this helpful. Thanks so much for joining me. Those 2 hours flew by. All the best to you if you're returning, if you've already returned. All the best to you in your job search. Just stay the course. Things will work out. You will land somewhere. Just stay committed to yourself and to your job search. It'll work out. All the best to you guys. Thank you so much.